Hi, I'm Marco Valenzuela, and the theme for my final project was how the emergence of secular science and experiments in the 16th century and scientific revolution paved the way for the success and progress of science and technology that extended through World War II and today. And I chose this topic because for me, I felt like that was the beginning of modern science, and so much progress was made in just the next century or so that can point back to that moment. And I chose to use Prezi as my medium because I felt like it added more depth to the smaller topics that I mentioned and throughout the presentation, and it provided a different dynamic to the information. And with regular PowerPoints, the information is presented in sort of a linear and almost chronological way, and with religion and with science and discoveries and progress like that, things aren't necessarily that straightforward. So Prezi gave me the option to place information where I wanted it. And for my sources, I used an excerpt from Martin Luther's letter to the German nobility, kind of as a symbol marking one of the first instances where the Catholic Church was questioned, especially by Martin Luther, who was a Catholic priest at the time. And after that, we begin to notice a real uprising in those against the corrupt church. And it also was a call for people to seek their own knowledge and experience and interpretation, which we know as the beginning of the scientific method. And then I went on to cite Copernicus and talk about Galileo and telling their story, and with Copernicus telling his story and giving a glimpse into how his work and observation was suppressed by his fears, just because of his fears by the backlash of the Catholic Church, and that him and Galileo both being scrutinized for their scientific work, it kind of began the slope of the church losing their influence over the common people. And that kind of segued into from the scientific revolution to the Enlightenment, where I quote Immanuel Kant, who was one of the leading voices in the Enlightenment that spoke in favor of people forming their own opinions and not letting other people, like the church, govern their own thoughts and realities. And I used the particular quote from page 195 of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, where it kind of talks about when Mercer is caught and that he's a fraud and that he's actually an android and not a human, because it kind of shows himself being a fraud in the way that parallels kind of the hypocrisy and corruption of the old Catholic Church. And in completing this project, I kind of found it interesting how humans as a society go through phases in their thinking. And in this case, I mean to emphasize like the influence of religion and how it changes in every era. And before the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, religion was pretty much the center of everyday life, and it slowly faded into the science and mathematics we learned early on in this course. But after the horrors of the two great wars and two world wars, we see how the entire world is kind of at its lowest, and all the people are grasping for hope of a better future, which inevitably pushes people towards religion and the ideas of hope and faith. And we see that in some of the main themes of media and other pieces during the Cold War, like in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, where the religion of Mercerism is created, and it's all about how treating people with compassion and reflecting compassion is the only way to prove you are human. And it's kind of feeding on that idea that we need to get back to loving one another and staying away from science and how cruel it can be.